Welcome! Tonight we're diving into the story of how Canada, yes, the land of maple syrup and hockey, sparked a consumer revolution in 2025. Canadians launched a wave of boycotts against US products, shaking up industries from coast to coast. We'll count down the 10 biggest boycotts that forced American companies to rethink everything. Some predictable, some truly wild. Grab an Nanaimo bar and let's get started. Number 10. The Great Dairy Boycott. It all started with a simmering trade dispute that would soon spill over into the daily lives of millions of Canadians. What began as a disagreement over ultra-filtered milk quickly escalated into a nationwide movement, uniting people from coast to coast in a show of solidarity rarely seen before. As tensions rose, Canadians rallied behind their local dairy farmers, determined to protect their livelihoods and the traditions that had shaped their communities for generations. Across the country, rallies erupted in support of Canadian dairy, with families, workers, and even children waving flags and chanting for change. Almost overnight, US cheese, yogurt, and ice cream vanished from shopping carts. Social media exploded with hashtags like #SupportCanadianCows and #DairyStrong as Canadians proudly showcased their commitment to buying local. The movement wasn't just about milk, it was about identity, pride, and standing up for what mattered most. Grocery aisles that once overflowed with American brands were suddenly bare, while Canadian products flew off the shelves. Shoppers compared labels, making sure every carton and wedge of cheese was homegrown. The message was clear: Canadian dairy was here to stay. The impact was immediate and dramatic. South of the border, US farmers faced devastating losses. Surplus milk and cheese piled up in warehouses with nowhere to go. News outlets reported on the mounting crisis as American producers scrambled to find new markets for their unsold goods. For Canadians, though, this was about more than just patriotism. It was a stand for their food system, their local jobs, and the future of their rural communities. Factory workers, grocers, and families all played a part, knowing that every purchase made a difference. The boycott didn't just protect existing jobs, it sparked a wave of innovation. Canadian dairy companies launched new products, expanded their operations, and invested in modernizing their facilities. Suddenly, Canadian cheese and yogurt were not just staples, but sources of national pride. The curd-led rebellion proved the power of collective action. When Canadians came together, they sent a message that echoed far beyond their borders. Don't mess with Canadian milk, or the people who stand behind it, or cheese, or yogurt. Every product on the shelf became a symbol of unity and resilience, a reminder of what can happen when a nation stands together. So next time you're in the dairy aisle, remember, in Canada, it's more than just food. It's a movement. Stay out of the dairy aisle, unless you're ready to join the rebellion. Number 9. The Tech Gadgets Boycott. In the heart of Canada's bustling cities, a new kind of protest was taking shape. It wasn't just about politics or the environment this time, it was about the very devices people used every day. Across Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, crowds gathered, holding up their smartphones and tablets, but not in celebration. Instead, they were demanding change. Concerns over US data privacy and a controversial new surveillance law had reached a boiling point. Canadians were growing uneasy about how much of their personal information was being tracked, stored, and potentially misused by foreign tech giants. The news was filled with stories of data breaches and government overreach, fueling a sense of urgency. That's when the #Texit movement exploded online. Social media feeds were flooded with the hashtag as people shared tips on repairing old phones, recycling outdated gadgets, and switching to non-US brands. Workshops popped up in neighborhoods, teaching people how to extend the life of their devices and avoid the latest upgrades. Suddenly, owning the latest iPhone or American gadget wasn't just a status symbol, it was a political statement. Many Canadians, especially the younger generation, began to see these devices as symbols of lost privacy and foreign control. Apple stores that once had lines out the door now stood eerily empty. The impact was immediate. Sales of US tech products plummeted across the country. Electronics stores reported empty aisles where American brands once dominated, and headlines announced a sharp drop in tech sales. Silicon Valley, long considered untouchable, suddenly felt the sting of a market in revolt. But out of this disruption came opportunity. Canadian startups, many focused on privacy and security, seized the moment. Small teams in modern offices worked late into the night, developing alternatives that promised to keep user data safe and local. These homegrown companies quickly gained loyal followings. Trust became the new currency in the tech world. Protesters held signs reading "Trust over Tech," and the once invincible logos of US tech giants began to crack under the pressure. The boycott proved that even the biggest companies could be challenged when people stood together. As Canadian demand dried up, innovation in Silicon Valley slowed. Layoffs and closed offices became common headlines as companies scrambled to regain trust and adapt to a new reality where privacy mattered more than ever. The message from Canada was loud and clear. Privacy isn't just a preference, it's a right. Canadians showed the world that they were willing to take a stand, even if it meant giving up the latest tech. And as determined crowds rallied in the streets, it became obvious. Canadians value their privacy and they're willing to fight for it, no matter the cost. Number 8. The fast food boycott. Scandals over labor practices at US chains sparked outrage in Canada. #DineCanadian trended as people abandoned American drive-thrus for local diners and Canadian chains. US franchises saw sales collapse, with many forced to close. The boycott changed eating habits, pushing people towards healthier, local options. It was a wake-up call for both corporations and consumers. Sometimes convenience isn't worth the cost. Number 7. The US fashion boycott. Exposes on environmental damage and labor abuses in American fast fashion shocked Canadians. Movements like #WearCanadian took off, and shoppers flocked to thrift stores and local designers. The ultimate status symbol became knowing where your clothes came from, not the logo. US brands scrambled to clean up their act, but the damage was done. The boycott shifted global trends towards sustainability and ethics. Canadians proved style means more than a label. Fashion had to change or be left behind. Number 6. The Great Energy Drink Boycott. It all started quietly, with energy drinks lining the shelves of every convenience store and supermarket across Canada. These brightly colored cans imported from the US promised instant energy and coolness, and they were everywhere, on billboards, in the hands of students, and even featured in late-night TV ads. But then, a bombshell dropped. A comprehensive Health Canada report emerged, linking popular US energy drinks to a range of health risks, especially in young people. The findings were alarming. Increased heart rates, sleep disturbances, and even potential long-term health effects. Suddenly, what seemed like harmless fun was now a public health concern. The media seized on the story, and overnight, energy drinks went from being the beverage of choice for students and young professionals to being labeled as dangerous and toxic. News anchors discussed the risks, and headlines warned parents to keep their kids away. Outraged parents, school boards, and universities quickly mobilized. They launched the #ProtectOurKids movement, demanding immediate action. Schools banned energy drinks from their campuses, parents protested outside stores, and universities held forums to educate students about the dangers. Social media campaigns shamed those who continued to drink them. The impact was immediate and dramatic. Store shelves that once overflowed with energy drinks were suddenly empty. Sales plummeted almost overnight, and US brands found themselves powerless to stop the growing backlash. Their marketing budgets and celebrity endorsements meant nothing in the face of public outrage. The boycott was swift, unexpected, and brutally effective. Retailers pulled products, and protesters gathered outside stores, demanding accountability. The message was clear. Canadians would not compromise their health for a quick boost of energy. Health advocates took center stage, reminding everyone that public health and safety should always come before flashy marketing and empty promises. Billboards and public service announcements reinforced the dangers, and the movement gained even more momentum. In the end, Canadians made a collective choice. They decided they didn't need wings. They'd rather walk, run, and live healthier lives. Friends encouraged each other to ditch the cans, and energy drinks became a symbol of what not to do. The fallout was massive. US energy drink factories closed, abandoned displays gathered dust, and the once booming industry never truly recovered. The Great Energy Drink Blackout became a powerful lesson in the strength of community action and the importance of putting health first. Number 5. The auto industry boycott. US automakers closed Canadian plants, devastating communities and sparking outrage. The Auto Workers Union called for a nationwide boycott of the offending brands. Canadians switched to cars built in Canada or by other countries. Dealerships for US brands emptied out while competitors thrived. The financial hit forced US companies to the negotiating table. The lesson: loyalty goes both ways. Abandon your workers and you lose your customers. The boycott drove that point home. Number 4. The processed foods boycott. Documentaries expose the health risks of American snack foods, fueling a wellness movement. Canadians embraced local produce, whole foods, and cooking from scratch. Hashtags like #EatRealFoodCanada inspired a new kind of activism, one that started in the kitchen. Grocery stores expanded Canadian sections, while US brands lost shelf space. The boycott hit US food giants hard, as Canadians chose health over convenience. It was a quiet revolution fought with grocery lists, not protests, and it changed the nation's diet for good. Number 3. The pharmaceutical boycott. After a US company forced a Canadian generic drug off the market, outrage erupted. Doctors and provinces prioritized non-US drugs, even if it meant tough choices. The boycott exposed the risks of relying on foreign pharmaceutical giants. US companies threatened to pull new drugs, escalating the crisis. The standoff forced Canada to rethink its drug supply and invest in domestic production. It was a high-stakes battle over healthcare values, and it's still shaping policy today. Number 2. The Hollywood boycott. A new US copyright law sparked outrage over digital rights and privacy. Canadians cancelled US streaming services and flocked to homegrown content. Theaters saw Canadian films outperform Hollywood blockbusters. The cultural conversation shifted, celebrating Canadian stories and stars. Hollywood panicked, fearing a production and revenue freeze. The boycott was a declaration of cultural independence. Canada proved it could tell its own stories, and people were ready to listen. America's soft power took a hit. And finally, number 1, the agricultural boycott. A GMO contamination scandal led Canada to ban US wheat and corn imports. The #Pure North movement saw shoppers scrutinize every label, avoiding American ingredients. The boycott disrupted supply chains and devastated US farmers. The standoff escalated into a full-blown trade crisis. It exposed the fragility of North America's food system. The message food sovereignty matters, and Canada was willing to fight for it. 10 boycotts, 1 seismic shift in US-Canada relations. Canadians proved the power of collective action and forced American companies to change. The trust was shaken, and the market will never be the same. These movements empowered Canadian consumers and sparked vital national conversations. Were these boycotts necessary self-defense or a risky path? Let us know in the comments. The story isn't over. Thanks for watching.